pair of hikers from Rhode Island have been rescued after getting stuck in treacherous terrain on Mount Washington.
At least one hiker expressed they were feeling symptoms of hypothermia. Officials tell us the hikers were brought to safety around 10 p.m. and thankfully there were no injuries.
This was no drill, but a real-life emergency deep in the White Mountains.
Broadcasting from the Woodpecker Studio in the Live Free or Die state of New Hampshire. Welcome to the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast, where we discuss all things related to hiking and search and rescue in the White Mountains of New Hampshire, occasionally including the counties of Belknap, something like that, and Coos, or is it Coos County? Whatever. Here are your hosts, Mike and Stomp.
All right, so welcome to episode 158. Stomp just added a late addition to the script, and he has me dying over here. I'm dying laughing, so I'll share it with the listeners in a moment. But so Stomp, why are we recording on a Wednesday night again? Well, why are you making me do this? I've been in Cambridge all day, and I'm not in the mood to do this today.
Oh, yeah, after all that traffic. Tomorrow night is the big debate. So it's the political Super Bowl for Stomp.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
So we've always talked about this, you're not a sports person.
No.
But you like politics.
Really.
You like this is like your World Series.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely love geopolitics and just civics in general. So, yeah, tomorrow night should be interesting.
Yeah. I'll be rearranging my sock drawer, I think.
Mrs. Stomp's not even going to be home either. She's like, I'm going to go over to my friend's house.
Yeah. From my perspective, I'll get all the highlights on TikTok in the morning when I wake up and I have to go to the bathroom. I'll just sit on the toilet and watch all the highlights, and I'm just We'll see. I'm sure Donald Trump will come up with some funny names for Joe Biden, and then Joe Biden will probably have some memory issues, and it'll be interesting. So,
yep.
Yeah, I think we're all going to be collectively dumber after Thursday night. So good luck to us. But anyway, so we're recording on Wednesday night, and then. I guess we'll go into this. I'll do the intro, Stomp, and then we can get started here. So welcome to episode 158 of the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast. This week, we catch up on some recent search and rescue news. We've got rescues on Monadnock, the Dry River, and Old Bridle. We're going to do a recap of some wild weather in New Hampshire from this weekend. There's a northbound fastest known time attempt that is coming through the Whites this week, so we'll cover details on that. 4th of July planning, because 4th of July is coming up. And we've got a follow-up segment on last week's history segment on the Trail Masters, where we talked about connecting the trails of the White Mountains. Stomp's got an announcement on new SLASR Patches. Oh, wait a minute, did I just give that away?
No.
Okay.
I think we talked about that briefly once.
Okay. And then controversy over a name change of the Devil's Tower, and then Stomp's favorite segment, Notable Hikers of the Week, otherwise known as Stomp's Instagram buddies, post their hikes. So I'm Mike.
Right. And I'm Stomp. Let's get started.
All right, let's get started. So let's go into a hiking buddy spot here, Stomp. And do you know what Mr. Barlow, our posh friend, is going to cover today?
This is a complete surprise. I have yet to look at it. I'll probably find out tomorrow night.
Very good.
This is Ben Pease from Hiking Buddies. We are a 501c3 nonprofit committed to reducing avoidable tragedies through education, impactful projects, and fostering a community of support. You can find out more at hikingbuddies.org. We wanted to say thank you to those who have supported our mission, and most importantly, say thanks to those who speak up, who ask questions, and who are willing to provide guidance and assistance on the trails when needed. You embody what it means to be a hiking buddy. And now, for all my newer hikers out there, here's this episode's Hiking Buddies Quick Tip.
Trekking poles help with downhill hiking and lower impact on knees and hips and aid in river crossings. They can also be used to clear spider webs in the morning, check mud and water depths, erect guy lines for your tent, and assist in supporting your weight for minor leg injuries.
Excellent. And then now Christina is going to share a little reminder about White Mountains endurance coaching.
That's right. Christina's endurance coaching, super cool tool for those that are looking to up their game in the whites, whether it be hiking, power hiking, running, trail running. She's definitely the go-to.
Hi, Christina with White Mountain Endurance Coaching, and I wanted to let you know that not only do I coach endurance athletes, I also coach hikers and mountaineers. I have plenty of experience in the White Mountains and would love to teach you how to start out, whether you're a beginner, if you're more advanced, give you some more skills to transition from hiking to trail running, and most of all, teach you how to move safely in the mountains. So whatever your goals are, whatever your experience is, reach out, coaching.christinafulsick.com. I'd love to help you.
Excellent. All right, Stomp. So I guess starting off, we just want to give the listeners a reminder on our schedule. So we will be releasing this show on, what is today? Today's the 26th. So we'll be releasing this show on June 28th, and then we're going to take a week off, so there'll be no episode on July 5th, and then we will be back on July 12th.
Sounds good.
And back
well-deserved vacay.
Normal schedule. And then I might need to take some time off around like end of August, like middle of August, that period. I get kids moving off to school and Europe and all that fun stuff. But otherwise, we'll be pretty steady Eddie.
Sounds good. Yeah, we've been cranking them out anyway for the last several weeks.
Yes, yeah. We've had great guests, and we've had all kinds of fun stuff to talk about, so it's great. But we're going to take a week off and enjoy the 4th of July holiday, and we've got some good adventures, so we'll share those when we get back.
For sure.
All right, Stomp, any suggestions on where to check out the 4th of July fireworks if you are in the New Hampshire area?
Well, there have to be some. I was looking at some of the local listings for the towns, and some of them are on Wednesday, some of them are Thursday on the actual 4th, and some are on the weekends. But there are some good spots you can check out fireworks. I think right here in Waterville, they're doing theirs on Thursday, and I believe the best location would be the Scour, that little cliff face about 1.5 miles up from Livermore. Let's see, if you're living in the Lincoln Woodstock area, I've not done this, but I would assume that Indian Head would be a really good option. It's not too much on the mileage, and you have a perch overlook view of Lincoln right there. On your side of the woods, North Conway, what do you think about Cranmore?
I have no idea, honestly, Stomp. Like, really? I think, because we typically are up in Maine, and the neighbors on the other, there's two ponds, and there's like a railroad track that cuts across them. So the big pond, they do fireworks every night over the 4th of July holidays. So we typically just sit on the beach, or we sit on the front porch and just check out the fireworks. So very rarely have we gone. I mean, I think you're right. I think Cranmore does fireworks. But yeah, I think the other thing that comes to mind, I believe Ossipee also has fireworks off of 125. There's typically like a big parking area there by Lake Ossipee that you can go to. But yeah, I very rarely ever go out on 4th of July just because we got these neighbors that like to light off fireworks, so we never have to.
Yeah. I'm trying to see if the weather will work out and give it a shot this year. I'm probably going to do the Scour one if I'm able, but What about the moats? Moats are pretty close to Conway, aren't
Yeah, absolutely. I think if there are fireworks going off, like if you did a nighttime hike on the moats, like hanging out on South Moat, you'd absolutely, if there's a clear view, you'd see all the fireworks, which would be cool.
Yeah, and then any peak with a fire tower would work as well. Like Red Hill Fire Tower has 360 views. You could probably look at Meredith, Laconia.
Yeah. I'm sure,
those
like
towns.
Chicora, I guarantee you, like there's a bunch of fireworks that go off over like Ossipee Lake in that area there. So yeah, anywhere where there's like bodies of water, what I've noticed is like anybody that lives on like these lakes, there usually is at least a few houses that sort of take it upon themselves to light off fireworks, because it's a good situation. It's like, it's kind of littering, but it's also good because you can just shoot them right over the water and you don't really have to worry about any fire situation. So that's typically what I see is a lot of people that are on the lakes. So
yeah, copy. Cool. Well, looking forward to it. It's always a fun holiday.
Yep, the 4th of July is always great. So, and we'll take a look. I'll see if I can post some stuff on the show notes so that you can take a look and make your plans. Yeah,
I mean, at the moment, we're looking at 24% chance of rain, but that's long range forecast for the 4th.
Yeah, that could change.
Who knows?
All right, Stomp, I don't know what this next line means. It says, keep an eye on SLASR Spaces for content. What is this?
Oh, yeah. Well, several weeks ago, I opened up a SLASR account on former X or former Twitter, and now it's called X. And they have a really cool Spaces thing, which allows you to do just live recording. And so I'm going to start just recording some, I want to get some content with Mrs. Stomp and then Grandma and Grandpa Stomp and whoever else is interested. But it's sort of a nice option to do longer form interviews with everybody and anybody who's interested, and just as a little supplemental bit of content for SLASR.
Oh, okay. So this is the place you were talking about, like if we wanted to go live somewhere, like we could do it this way.
Correct.
Okay,
right.
got it.
So I'm thinking, I think it'll be really fun just to do some longer form, just spontaneous interviews where anything's on the table for topics, including hiking. So it might be interesting to get a little more detail from some people. So keep an eye out.
Okay. Yeah. Send me the link and I'll put it in the show notes. I don't think I don't have a Twitter, so I'll have to see what I do with my own personal, but I'll figure it out. And that sounds good, Stomp. You're always on it with the social media. I love that about you. So that I don't have to be. Yes. Okay. So breaking news, Stomp. I saw this. So first of all, I think we missed this last week. So I think it was June 21st is my least favorite holiday of the year, which is like Hike Naked Day.
Oh, damn.
We've
you're right.
talked about naked hikers before. I've stumbled on naked hikers in the Emerald Pool. I think you said you've stumbled into naked hikers, I think in the Emerald Pool as well, but like somewhere else.
Baldface.
Yeah. Baldfaces. That seems to be a place where naked people like to go. But I saw on Nick News, which is this like Facebook group about North Conway news, indecent exposure call was reported on South Moat. So we'll have to see what that's all about. I'm watching it closely to figure it out. All the commenters, I had to laugh. Like half the commenters were like, it's probably some guy that just had to go to the bathroom on the trail and he didn't walk far enough on the trail. And then the other half are like, this is why we picked the bear. So
there you go.
So anyway, we'll keep an eye on that. But it's a good reminder. So if nature calls and you're on the trail, even though you think that no one's around, I can guarantee you the second that you do your business, someone is going to pop up. So you want to get as far off the trail as possible. Make sure you walk like 200 feet so that you're not visible from the trail, and then do your thing. If you're doing your number 2 thing, make sure that you bring a trowel to bury your business or pack it out. So remember, dogs on the trails, if you're too close to the trail, they tend to find that human waste, and it's not good for the dog owners.
That's really funny. Indecent exposure. I totally forgot about that naked hiking day, but that's a big thing. Yeah,
or a small thing.
It's a...
So I just hate the idea. I seriously, if I come across a naked hiker, I'm going to punch them in the head. I'm gonna be like, put your clothes on. So maybe I won't punch them because probably most people are bigger than I am. So I just, I'll just give them like a very angry yell.
Yeah. So creepy.
All right, Stomp. So SLASR Patches. So these are like we've done stickers and we've done the window clings, and now we're doing patches. And these are like good, high quality looking patches. And I think a lot of people are into patches. I have patches sewn into my backpack, so I will definitely get one of these and sew it onto all of my backpacks.
They're looking good.
Yeah. So it's they're like circular patches, but the search and rescue piece of it is like a little extended over the edges, and it looks cool.
Like a little wing, and they're 3.5 to 4 inches in diameter, so they're pretty big.
Okay.
They're the iron-on kind, as opposed to the Velcro kind.
Okay.
And I never had success with the iron-on kind anyway. I always end up stitching them in.
I always stitch them in too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. You have to.
Yeah.
But they're looking good. So Evergreen Embroidery in Campton is working on that now, and a lot of people are asking when they're going to be ready. We have no idea.
Okay.
We have no idea, but it's definitely in process, and then we'll have to discuss what we want to do with them, if we want to sell them or just pass them out at shows, or who knows. We'll come up with a plan. Yeah,
we'll probably do a mix or something. Very good. All right, and then just a reminder for the listeners, I was taking a look at our Apple. So I had a conversation. So my daughter is, I'll do a little bit of a long story here, but basically I want to see if people can give us 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts. But the reason why I remembered it is because my daughter is currently my middle daughter is currently working as a camp counselor. And she's like overseeing, I think, like 10 or 12-year-olds or something like that. And she's she's going into her junior year at college. So she's a little bit older. So the kids are like, what's your social media? What do you have like an Instagram account, all this stuff? So they're not allowed to give any of that info out. But my daughter was telling me, she's like, they ask like, what does your parents do for a living and all this stuff. So my daughter's like, my dad has a podcast. And they're like, is he famous? Income. And she's like lying to them and saying like, yeah. And I laughed and I said, tell them I know Stomp. But anyway, so it got us talking, and I was like, tell them to give us a follow and a 5-star review on Apple Podcast as a joke. And then I remembered, I was like, I just have to tell the audience to give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast. So if you would be so kind to do that would be great. I don't know what it does for us, but it makes me feel good when I see like a 5-star review with a nice comment. So
yeah. I don't think I've ever looked, but it must affect rankings or in search engines or who knows.
I don't know, Stomp. It's like my version of notable hikes. When it happens, it makes me happy.
That's great.
All right. So moving on here, Stomp. I've been following our friend Matt Shin, he was on a show a long time ago. He did like a through hiker segment for us. Good guy. He's got a social media thing, and he follows a lot of the like ultra running and the fastest known time stuff. So he's been tracking this story, and then I just pulled it. I've been sitting on it because I wanted to just wait until he got to New Hampshire, but Kristian Morgan, who I believe he holds the fastest known time southbound on the Appalachian Trail. He's 32 days into his northbound attempt for the fastest known time. So he had made it to Vermont in 28 days. And that was around 1,500 miles. And at that point, he was about 60 miles ahead of the record as he entered Vermont. Now, he is dealing with some leg and knee issues now, Stomp, so he slowed down a little bit. I think he had a rough day yesterday where he couldn't run at all, and he was relying on hiking poles 100% of the time. And the guy that he is trying to beat is Carol Sabby, I think is his name. He did it in like 41 days and change.
Do you know the year that was set?
It was pretty recently. I don't know if I have
because I remember Jerzik and all these other guys had the record for a while.
Yeah. Oh, actually, it wasn't that recently. It was 2018.
Okay.
2018. Yeah. So this is the supported. So so Scott Jurek had it for like 3 years. His time was 46 days. And then Carol beat it. It's 41 days, 7 hours, 39 minutes. And right now, so between when he entered Vermont, he's currently 32 days in. I just looked at the live tracker. He just cleared Smarts Mountain and is heading towards Hexacube Shelter.
Okay, sure.
I'm assuming he's going to, I don't know how long he goes. Matter of fact, I can actually look at the live tracker here.
Yeah, miles per day.
Yeah, and he's doing so basically he's averaging 53 miles, 54 miles a day. And if he keeps up with that pace, assuming he stops at Hexacube Shelter, then tomorrow he would go from Hexacube, he would go over Mount Cube, into Moosilauke, over the Cannons, Kinsman's, and then into Franconia, and then he would stop somewhere around Garfield tent site.
Yeah.
And then on Friday, he would go through Pinkham Notch from Garfield tent site. He would get to Pinkham Notch, and then Saturday he'd be going from Pinkham up to Full Goose Shelter, which is the shelter that's like right before Mahoosic Notch. And then he'd be into Saddleback, and then he'd have like around 200 miles left with like 4 days. And he's definitely not, he was originally 60 miles ahead of Carell, but I think that's tightened a little bit. So it's going to, if he gets it, it's going to be within like probably a 24-hour period.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I mean, that's a hell of a feat. I don't know the difference between north versus south, if there's one that's harder or easier.
I don't know. Let me see. So the fastest known time, I would assume northbound would be easier because you're like not dealing with the crazy stuff right away. So he did the southbound in 45 days. And then he's on pace to do northbound in like 41 days. So I'm assuming northbound is a little bit more, a little easier, I guess, compared to southbound.
I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
I guess you get all the easy stuff, but there's the training and.
You could also argue that, like, okay, once you clear Vermont, then it gets a lot easier, and you could do many more like 60 to 65 mile days.
Heading south.
Yeah, heading south, exactly.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Get the hard stuff over with in the first place, but interesting.
But it did get me thinking, Stomp. I was like, I remembered that I was just thinking for an FKT, I keep looking at, and nobody has put in for this one, is there is a southbound supported FKT, which is a mixed gender team. So, and this group did it with like 5 people, and they kind of did it because they were like, no one has put up any time. They put it in for 14 hours. So I sort of feel like if I could get like a good crew together, I could probably, I don't know how quickly I could do it. I could probably bang out a presidential in like 10 or 11 hours. So if I could get a mixed gender crew around that same pace, like we could take the FKT for the presidential traverse.
Yeah, I bet.
So,
well, you gave that a shot before, didn't you?
Yeah, and my sister-in-law bailed out on me.
Got it. Got it.
She wasn't feeling it. So, no, she did great, but she was just not feeling it, and she didn't want to slow me down. So, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll find a female friend or 2 or 7, and we'll go for it.
Well, unfortunately, all the listeners are going to undercut your plan here, so forget about it.
Yeah, but I was talking about this last year, and no one has done it, so we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Listeners are savvy.
Yeah. So good luck, Kristian Morgan, and we'll keep everyone updated. By the time we get back, he'll be done.
Yeah, no kidding. Have to keep a lookout.
That's crazy, though. He went 28 days from Springer Mountain, Georgia, up to Vermont.
Yeah, it's a machine.
Yeah, it's nuts. All right, Stomp. So wild weather weekend. EF1 confirmed in Dublin near Keene. I know that they were looking at a couple of likely tornado.
Yeah.
Down in like the corner of Connecticut, Massachusetts, near the New York border. So, but it looks like there was a similar one up by Keene.
Yeah, it was interesting that afternoon. That this was last Sunday, the Race the Cog Day. They ended up canceling that the night before because of the higher summits forecast, and just in general, people were planning on seeing some potential tornado activity. And that afternoon did shape up more towards the Keene, Manchester area, and they confirmed that there was an EF1, which I don't recall the speed of that, but it's a lower speed. It did do some damage to the local communities in Dublin. So pretty wild weather.
Yeah, not as wild as I had hoped. I was hoping we were going to get like a big one, but it's good enough. I mean, I would like a big one like in the whites to like clear out. Maybe like get a tornado right on like the summit of Hill or something, knock the trees down.
How about get rid of that obnoxious cairn?
Well, that's okay, but like I think the tree, just cut a path across the trees like naturally to get a bit of a view out to the Pemmies or something.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Oh yeah, tornadoes always fascinate me.
Yeah. There's some cool spots in the whites that have gotten taken over by, like I think of that section between, or the like Willie Tom Field. There's like a section that definitely got hit by some serious activity because all the trees are knocked over. And then there's another one when you drop down into the tree line by Davis Path, there's like trees that are all wiped out when you're heading to isolation. I remember me and you did that. We went there, and it's like definitely got like some tornado activity or something there.
Yeah.
So,
and by the way, the Race the Cog has been rescheduled to August 24th for those that are interested in attending just to watch, because it is a blast. It's like unlike any other race in the whites. It's so cool. I'm assuming that there are no new COG tickets. I'm assuming that those people that were lucky enough to get tickets to go on the COG to watch it are just going to have their tickets transferred to that date. But definitely try to check it out, August 24th.
Excellent. All right, Stomp, and then we got. Yeah. I love when the listeners send us fun facts. This is a good one.
Yeah, it is a good one. This one came in from listener Dave Size-Werda. Sorry if I chop that up a bit, but quote, listening to the latest episode, fun facts about earthquakes. Cisco Brewing in Portsmouth is modeled after the Seattle location, which is designed to be earthquake proof. So one of the safest places to be during an earthquake is at the brewery. Thank you, Dave, for the info. It's very cool. Very cool.
That is a fun fact. So I know where I'm going the next time an earthquake hits.
Yeah, that's right. Have a brew and survive.
Right. All right, Stomp. So in the past, we've talked about this committee that's been set up called the Reconciliation and Place Names Committee. We've done a couple of segments, I think, just updating people about like different name changes. And I know there was like a movement to change the name of Mount Washington at one point that I think got denied by the Board of Geographic Names. But the Devil's Tower, which I believe is in Wyoming, has been in the federal government's crosshairs for quite a while now. Yeah. And it sounds like there was a meeting of the Reconciliation and Place Name Subcommittee. So this subcommittee was put in place by President Biden under the management of the Bureau of Land Management. And the purpose of this subcommittee is to provide guidance and advice to the Board of Geographic Names. So typically the Board of Geographic Names, the process is that you've got to like make an appeal to them. They'll review it. It's a very slow, archaic process. So the idea was that they would set up this subcommittee that would make recommendations to the Board of Geographic Names. And then if they didn't move on it quickly enough, then I think that they can use like executive mandates to sidestep the board if they want to. So they've come out with a recommendation to change the name of Devil's Tower, which is a famous, like basically it's like a square tower. I don't even know how tall it is, Stomp. Do you know how tall it is?
I don't, but it's the one from Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
It's iconic.
I believe it's the insides of an old volcano, and it's serrated vertically with just vertical lines, and it's a pretty stunning piece of rock for sure.
So and I think it was the very first national monument, if I'm not
correct. FDR.
Correct,
Yep, that was the very first one, and this is an interesting story. So back in June, the committee there for the reconciliation met, and this came up in the conversation. And apparently, back in 2014, 10 years ago, Native tribes had put forward a request to change the name back to its original. There's this controversy about the original name because different Native tribes had different names for it, but it basically comes down to variations of Bear Rock, Bear Lodge, Bear Tippy. And what's interesting about this is crazy, but this is a lost in translation type of situation. Back in 1875, there was an individual named Colonel Richard Irving Dodge who was scoping out the area with the Army, if I remember correctly. And they had a translator, and the translator, he said the word Wahanksika, which means black bear, but it was misinterpreted to say Wakansika, which is evil spirit. So following that episode, this colonel began saying it was Devil's Tower. So it's basically this lost in translation type of error that occurred way back in the day. Where the story gets really interesting is when the government wanted to create a monument in Wyoming in this area, the Grand Tetons. It's back in the 20s with John D. Rockefeller. Ultimately, what came out of this situation in the 20s, you had all the ranchers saying, no way, you're not going to take all our land. You're talking like 200,000 plus acres of land. The people of Wyoming actually got protection congressionally to protect any future effort to change names or to create monuments. And you can look it up yourself. It's, what is it here? It's Code 54 U.S. Code, Section 320301. And it says basically, limitation of extension or establishment of national monuments in Wyoming. So no extension or establishment of national monuments in Wyoming may be undertaken except by express authorization of Congress. So you did mention that the secretary is going to try to skirt around that, but it's literally codified in law that they cannot do that based upon the history of Wyoming legislation. Fascinating story. And this is one of the few ones that I actually agree with. I mean, if that was just an error in the name, but then again, you have to consider it's been named this way for so long. It's like, I don't know. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the word devil is like a. I think the argument is that like the devil was used to like disparage Native American tribes in that region, and I don't know, maybe that's true, but you know, it's kind of a
unique.
Yeah.
So check it out. It's super cool. And the reason I brought it into this script this week is, what affects national parks elsewhere can potentially affect us here. And there's been rumblings about changing Mount Washington and all these other names.
Well, I'm always nervous about the presidentials and like what would happen there. I mean, it sounds like it's pretty unrealistic that something would happen. But then again, you never know. I did pull Stomp. I pulled the recommendations of. So there was two recommendations that came out of it. One was to rename the Devil's Tower, and then that will be like a big political battle. And then they did a lesser recommendation with a list of 143 derogatory names, and these are interesting. So there are like there's about 6 or 7 of these that are like, one is called Rape Creek. And then there's like, I'm trying to, how many of these are there? Papoose.
Yeah, Papoose.
There are, what is Papoose? I don't even know what that word is. So 110 Papoose place names that are proposed to be, I feel like a Papoose was like, if I'm not correct, I feel like that was like something you hold a kid in, right?
Right, I thought so too. Let me look it up quick here just to see if there's any.
Yeah, And then as you're looking this up, here's peckerwood is the other one. Mm-hmm. So they made these recommendations to essentially, so there's 18 peckerwoods.
Okay.
There are...
according to this, in Algonquin, it means child, papoose.
Okay. That's interesting. I didn't know that was derogatory. So there's 18 peckerwoods. There are 113 papooses.
Yeah.
There are 5 that use the word rape, and then there's 6 that use a version of the N-word, but with PP in the middle. So I don't know exactly what that means. And then interestingly, there's a word, there's a hill in Massachusetts in Worcester County that uses a derogatory term, like basically the F word that would be used in derogatory towards a gay person. So, which is shocking to me that still exists in Massachusetts. But there are some, there are some inappropriate names in some of these features. But that's so these seem. I guess apparently these words will go, or these place names will go to the Board of Geographic Names, and then that will start the discussion on how they will rename each of these places. But so many of them are just streams, and I just wonder whether or not they are even referenced as such. But it's interesting.
Just digging a little deeper in this papoose thing, I guess the argument is for it being derogatory is that it refers to an indigenous baby or a young child of North America, and I guess in today's lexicon culture, that's derogatory or offensive. It's also a carrier. It's like a sling or a pouch.
That's what I always knew it as. So a lot going on here. So I'll link some of the stuff on the Reconciliation and Place Names committee, and then if you want to dig around, the other cool thing about this is there's like public comments.
Oh yeah,
and there's some funny letters about just people getting mad about certain things, so it's worth checking out.
Oh, the comment sections are always the best. That's where the action is.
These are like public. Matter of fact, Stomp, I was actually thinking we could even write, like, you can write a letter to the committee, and by law they have to like put it on their website as a public comment.
Yeah, there you go. A little promotion, a little PR.
Yes. Yes. We want to rename something to Stomp Hill. So, all right. So moving on here, Stomp, I got a couple of news stories that I wanted to pull. So our friend Al had sent this over to us. There was a cold case murder that was solved, and this was a murder that happened in the 1990s. It was 2 backpackers, basically two women. They were a couple. They were backpacking in the Shenandoah and close to where the Appalachian Trail is, and they were murdered. And this case has now been solved by DNA. So DNA test determined that Walter Leo Jackson Sr. killed Lolly Winans and Julie Williams, 26 and 24 years old, at Shenandoah National Park on May 24th, 1996. The FBI's Richmond, Virginia field office and U.S. Attorney's Office of Western District of Virginia made the announcement on somewhere around June 20th. So 28 years it took them to solve this crime. They had previously targeted, I think, 1 or 2 other suspects. They had even arrested and charged a suspect that later turned out to be innocent of that crime, but I think was guilty of some other crimes. Apparently what happened here is that there was DNA of the suspect in the CODIS database, but the challenge was that the DNA from the crime scene, they weren't able to, I guess, get enough DNA to get a profile match. The FBI worked with a private lab to collect DNA from several pieces of evidence, and that DNA profile was sent to the FBI's, I believe it's called the CODIS database, and that eventually led to a positive match. So I think they were able to use some new DNA techniques to get a better read on it. So,
wow.
This was a pretty well-known story. Anytime you went on, like, okay, unsolved mysteries around the Appalachian Trail. This was like one of the top unsolved cases. So this is a big deal. And this was a big deal because when they did arrest the first person, I think that they were working on charging him with a hate crime because this was a same-sex couple. And that was like very early on in like the late 90s, early 2000s that they had started using hate crime laws around cases like this. So it's been an unsolved mystery for a long time, so it's good to get some closure. Still sad for the family, horrible story, but it's just good that at least we have an answer.
Interesting. Yep. DNA is key now.
It's incredible the way they're able to process DNA from smaller and smaller samples, and then what they can do with genetic DNA and tracking family members through it. I don't think in this case it was much more straightforward. It was just really getting the DNA, but the amount of unsolved crimes that have been solved because of genetic or genealogy and DNA it's been crazy.
Right.
Another story Al sent over that I thought was interesting, Stomp, is this is a story about an Air Force captain and a staff sergeant that were both permanently disabled in 2023. They were training for search and rescue, and they were in a tactical vehicle and experienced a rollover. So this tactical vehicle is like a Hummer. It's bigger than what you would see with those side-by-side UTVs, but it's sort of the same idea. It's a Hummer, open roll cage situation. So an Air Force captain and a staff sergeant were injured in a rollover crash while training in the Pacific last year. So it happened in Tinian on the northern Mariana Islands, which I think is like, I feel like the Mariana Islands Stomp was where they did like some of those nuclear bomb tests and things like that. Way back in the 50s. But it was a male captain was driving a side-by-side search and rescue tactical vehicle with a female staff sergeant in the passenger seat. So the captain who was driving was a tactical air control party officer, and he was there to participate in an exercise on the island, and I guess the staff sergeant was a non-commissioned public affairs officer, so she was there documenting the event. So while traveling to the training exercise, they went down a narrow, overgrown road, and the vehicle went off the road into thick vegetation and began to roll. Neither one of them were wearing their seatbelts or personal protective equipment, and they were both ejected. So the captain suffered serious injuries that caused permanent paralysis below the waist. So the guy's paralyzed.
Yep. And
then the public affairs staff sergeant, she was part of the 1st Combat Camera Squadron out of South Carolina, sustained serious injuries to include a pelvic fracture, internal abdominal injuries resulting in several corrective surgeries, and an above-the-knee amputation. So she had internal bleeding and lost her leg because of this. She told the accident board investigators that she requested assistance with the harness buckle from the captain, but he waved her off and stated that they were only a 5-minute drive and they did not need to wear seatbelts. She also told investigators that she had a nervous feeling about the speed the vehicle was going, and she made multiple requests to the captain that he slow down, and he ignored her. So it sounds to me a little bit like this guy was a bit of being a macho guy, figuring like I can drive super fast, and
yikes.
And then this accident happened. And, luckily, I mean, they were around like a search and rescue team, so they were able to get out. But it was pretty crazy. One of the first on the scene had talked about how he saw a black spot just right of her navel, which was like early signs of internal bleeding. So she was starting to develop like a big black spot, and they were able to call Flightline. So both of them were in really bad shape. Initially, they were all focused on the man because he appeared to be in worse shape. They didn't realize that her leg had been completely snapped off and that she had the internal bleeding. So they delayed their their triage of her just because they didn't realize how bad it was until they really started looking at it. So scary situation.
So she would have put the belt on had she known how to put the belt on?
She was she was trying to get a harness on.
So he refused, saying, "Don't worry about it."
He was like, "Yeah, don't worry about it. We're 5 minutes away. It's a quick drive." So she just said, "All right, forget it. I trust him."
That blows.
Then he starts driving like a maniac, and she's kind of like, "Hey, slow down. I'm getting nervous." He probably was like, "Oh, I'm gonna give her a thrill ride, and she's gonna be impressed with how badass I am." And then next thing you know, they roll.
That is such a shame. I'm sure she probably would have put it on had she known.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
crazy stuff.
Anyway, but yeah, crazy story. And then the other one that Al had sent over is, and you had sent this to me too, Stomp. There was a hiker that went missing for 10. My antenna is always wide open on these cases because I don't know, because I get a weird thing. We've covered a couple of these cases. So missing hiker was rescued, lost for 10 days in the Santa Cruz Mountains of California. He was supposedly going for a 3-hour hike when he disappeared. He didn't bring anything. And he basically spent 10 or 9 nights out there. He only had a flashlight and folding scissors. He said he was like drinking out of streams using his boot as a cup. And, search and rescue efforts went on. They finally found him, but I don't know, Stomp. I feel like sometimes these guys, maybe they take a little bit of LSD and go out for a vision quest, and then they're a little embarrassed. But I don't know about this one.
I don't either. You know what? When I first read it, the thing that gave me a red flag vibe was that he would use his boot to drink the water from the waterfall, and I just thought that was sort of weird. I don't know. We'll have to keep an eye on this one because I don't know. I don't know. I can't put my finger on it, but something doesn't sit right with this one. It's probably legit.
Maybe he plays rugby. I used to, the rugby guys I knew, they were very big into, like, after the games, they would pour beer into their boots and they would all drink out of the boot. Yeah, it was like a
maybe it's
bonding
habit
thing. So maybe.
Yeah, maybe it's habit. Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
But good for him. He's alive. 10 days.
Yes. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Hey, what's that sound? It must be time for the pop culture segment with Mike and Stomp.
All right, Stomp. So this was the story that you pulled that made me laugh at the beginning of the show. So Stomp's like, I had this story I was going to put in about pop culture because I thought it was funny, but it's stupid. And I was like, well, what is it? And then he explained it to me, and I was like, yeah, we'll put this in. So we'll share this in the show notes. But there's this pop singer named Ed Sheeran. And he's pretty big. My kids know him and stuff. I couldn't name a song by him. I
couldn't either.
I guess I could probably, but he sells out arenas and all this stuff. So he has a super fan who apparently goes to all his shows. Her name is Amanda Barron, and she's 40 years old. I guess she's known as like being like a super fan and whatnot, but she found some dude that maybe she's like stalking Ed Sheeran, but she wasn't successful. So she found this guy that looks like Ed Sheeran. So Ed Sheeran's this redheaded, goofy looking guy that wears glasses. And she found a guy that looks exactly like him and married him. And now it's all over the news that this super fan married a doppelganger of Ed Sheeran, and apparently she had like a bunch of celebrity lookalikes at the wedding, including like a lookalike of Prince Harry, Jack Sparrow, Gordon Ramsay, David Beckham. So that's pretty funny.
Yeah, he's like the poor woman's Ed Sheeran. He's like much skinnier, sort of lanky looking. I mean,
yeah, but the thing is, like, he is she could not have picked a guy that looks more exactly like Ed Sheeran than this guy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he looks exactly like him. So
does it go into how long they knew each other or anything like that? It says they were dating for over 2 years.
Yeah.
So that takes a little bit of the uncertainty and weirdness away from it. Like, imagine if
she's got a type.
Just met the guy.
She's got a type.
She certainly does.
Yeah, she's got a type. So anyway, so we'll put this in the show notes, and people can judge for themselves. It's a little bit creepy, but it's also like I mean, if you were into a celebrity and you want to look alike like this, she killed it. Like, she found someone exactly like this guy.
That's right. Yeah.
We all know that hiking a mountain can be hard at times. So here's a corny dad joke to help you get over it.
All right, Stomp. So this is the part of the show where I do a dad joke.
Yahoo. I'm ready. I'm going to nail it.
What do you call people who are afraid of Santa?
I give up.
Claustrophobic.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Claustrophobic.
Okay. I see what they did there.
All right. We want a bonus one?
Yeah, sure. What the hell? We're off next week.
And this is a good one. Why does Piglet smell so bad?
Why?
Because he plays with poo. Oh, thank you, Lance and Camilla, for my 365 days of bad dad jokes.
Excellent. That'll hold over the fans, the listeners, for 2 weeks.
Yeah. Speaking of fans, Stomp, I hope that you're using a fan to keep you from getting too hot and sweating.
Yeah, I've got one blowing on my back right now.
Well, that's good. That's
right.
Like, you got to keep that back sweat off. And speaking of back sweat off, now's the time for us to do an ad for Vaucluse.
That's right. So does your backpack not provide enough ventilation? Does your back sweat too much when backpacking? As you know, sweat can be extremely uncomfortable on the trails. Plus, sweat is a serious risk factor in both hot and cold climates. As your clothes get wet, your core temperature can dramatically fluctuate, and this can result in hypothermia, heat exhaustion, and dehydration. Let's not forget very uncomfortable. Today's your lucky day because we have good news for you. There's a piece of gear that solves the sweat and ventilation problem, making your backpack more comfortable. Vaucluse Gear's ultralight backpack ventilation frame. This ultralight frame is a backpack accessory that easily installs in your favorite pack, size 15 liters to 45 liters, and creates a ventilating airflow gap between you and your pack. It's also ultralight, weighing around 3 ounces, or equivalent to a pair of wool socks. Whether hiking in hot or cold temps, the ultralight backpack ventilation frame from Vaucluse Gear is a real game changer regarding airflow and ventilation. So visit them at vauclusegear.com to order an ultralight ventilation frame today and enjoy $5 off using promo code SLASR, and let them know that Mike and Stomp sent you. Hey, he posted a review of yours. Is that correct?
Yeah. For the listeners, just a pro tip: if you want to get a free T-shirt, just if you have a Vaucluse frame, put in a review, and then he'll post it, and then also he will send you a cool T-shirt. So I got a cool T-shirt that says Vaucluse, and then it's got like the frame picture on the back of the T-shirt. So it's pretty nice.
That's awesome. And, of course, you can get your stickers at Ski Fanatics in Campton, New Hampshire, and Spinners in Andover, Massachusetts, for all you massholes. And you can always advertise with the podcast if you want to plug your whatever. And we have our Bonfire shop online at bonfire.com. You can get all kinds of cool stuff, including summertime tops.
Yeah, get that hoodie sweatshirt for the summer.
That's going to go over big, right? It's probably not.
I've been wearing mine, like all my nieces and nephews, and like everyone's like, I want one of those. And I'm like, all right, I know what I'm getting everyone for Christmas.
Yeah, for sure. They're beautiful. So let's see what else. The color selection is great. Help spread the word about Slasher and represent today. And this week we have 2 coffee donations. And if you want to support the show, you can donate to our Buy Me a Coffee site. And donations are greatly appreciated as they help us pay for web hosting, distribution, live events, and now patches. Super cool. So Mr. Connolly Hikes, we talked about him finishing his 48, if I remember correctly, last week.
He's the Slasher gym teacher, right?
Yeah, that's right. So Mr. Connolly Hikes donated 5. Thank you, Mr. Connolly. And then Heidi Waddell also donated 5 coffees. So thank you to both of you. It's much appreciated. And now a couple extra advertisements here before we go into the bear talk. So 48 Peaks that was held a couple weeks back was a great time at Reckless. So people are still hiking out there, mind you. So use your passion for hiking to help end Alzheimer's. In one collective effort, 400 plus hikers will climb New Hampshire's 4,000 footers or create their own hiking challenge to advance the care, support, and research efforts of the Alzheimer's Association. Hike anytime this summer and help turn the White Mountains purple to end Alzheimer's. There's no fundraising minimums required, but you can unlock fun prizes as you fundraise. So visit alts.org/48peaks to learn more. And then we also have CS Coffee, which is absolutely fantastic. It's like a Starbucks. It's a darker blend in these compostable packets. Amazing stuff. So the podcast is supported by CS Instant Coffee, makers of eco-friendly instant coffee. It's perfect for anyone who loves the outdoors as much as we do. Great for backpacking, day hiking, camping, and even at home. And that is for sure. So learn more and get in touch at csinstant.coffee or email them at info@csinstant.coffee.
Hey, hold my beer. It's time to find out what Mike and Stomp are drinking on this week's Beer Talk.
Very good, Stomp. Very good. So this is the part of the show. So we're not, I'm thinking about coffee, but right now we're drinking beer at this point. So we're going to talk about what we are drinking. So what do you got?
I'm going back to my roots. It's summer and I'm having a harder time putting down beer, so I just grabbed a Twisted Tea half and half.
Oh, look at you.
Yeah, you like that. That's half and half. What is it, lemonade and iced tea? Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah.
5%, tasty. Sugar bomb, but hey, that's all right.
Why not? I'm working on, I think, my second fiddlehead of my 4-pack that I started last week.
What do you think?
Yeah, it's not bad.
It's an interesting
a good go-to beer. I usually they're at restaurants a lot, so I'll usually grab a fiddlehead if that's the options.
Yeah, it's an interesting aftertaste. Like you can legit taste the ingredient.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Good stuff.
Yes, it is. And then now's the part of the show where we talk about recent hikes, Stomp, and unfortunately, we had crappy weather. And I went to a concert Friday night. I went and saw Hootie and the Blowfish were the headliners.
Wow.
And Bare Naked Ladies and Collective Soul and Ed McKean. I guess all those, the connection with this whole group, except for the Bare Naked Ladies, but Collective Soul, Edwin McKean, and Hootie are all connected to South Carolina, Georgia.
Okay, that makes sense.
In that area. So they've all known each other for years. But it was a great show. Boston was pumping because it was that morning they had done the Celtics parade. So we got to Fenway by 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. And the place was just, every bar was packed. So we just went right to Yawkey Way and just hung out and had beers and ate there and then went in. And there was a little bit of a rain delay. But so Collective Soul and Edwin McKean played, and then there was a rain delay for about an hour and a half, and then Bare Naked Ladies played a 45-minute set, and then Hootie played about 25 songs or so. So it was good.
Epic.
A lot of covers. Yeah,
Epic.
A lot of covers.
That's a good lineup. Yep. So Hootie, the lead singer, Ruckus, is that his name?
Darius Rucker. Yeah.
He does his solo country stuff, and now he just came back for this tour, I guess.
Yeah, they've reconnected. So I don't think he played. He did do Wagon Wheel, and then maybe he did one or two other of his solo, but mostly it was they probably honestly did about 10 cover songs, and then about 10 or 15 Hootie and the Blowfish songs.
Okay, and here's another interesting little tidbit. So the SLASR Podcast intro theme song, which we call Water Pots, where we start the show off. That was produced by a legend Boston producer, Anthony Resta, who's now out in L.A. And Anthony Resta has produced an S-load of Collective Soul's music, namely that tune Heavy. You know Heavy? The one that starts off with the guitars, like syncopated guitars. That's Anthony. So there you go. There's a little factoid for everybody.
Wow, that's interesting. So and they were great. They sounded really good, but like the Collective Soul, like the lead singer, he's a little old. He's got to button his shirt up a little bit. It's. I don't know how I feel about I think we've talked about this before, like the older. Rockers. Yeah, I think we talked about that before. But Darius Rucker he's in great shape, and he got around the stage really well. And I think he's like 58, but he looks like he's in his 40s, so he was good.
Huh? That's funny. I got to mention this. Speaking of aging rockers, there was that clip of Van Halen when they were on Jimmy Kimmel late night. They were outside at. Did you ever see this? And it was David Lee Roth spinning a steel pole doing his kung fu thing. And it's this video that's out there floating around, but he bangs his nose and like shatters his nose, but he keeps on performing it. Look it up on YouTube. It's wild. But speaking of aging rockers, David Lee was not looking so great.
Really? Yeah. He's definitely the type of guy that, because he was so physical on stage, that you just call it a day.
Right.
So, yeah.
Oh, man. All right. So
what about you? You got out to Well Sticky, it looks like.
Yeah, I was going to, it's like psychological. I had moved on because I'm at the point where I don't think I should even mention WD anymore because I'm out there quite a bit and it doesn't really seem like it's, something notable. But yeah, it was nice. I mean, I did it counterclockwise. No, I'm sorry, clockwise. Ton of people coming up the other direction. This is after the rain, so the trails are fairly wet, but the ledges are dry from the sun and the wind. So yeah, nothing dramatic out there, but I'm hoping to get out soon for the holiday.
That's great. That's great, Stomp. So I'm getting out on Saturday, so I'll text you and let you know what I'm doing. I think I'm going to get up to Evans Notch.
Oh, this weekend?
I think so, yeah. I got Saturday. I'm either going to get up to Evans Notch. I may even go up to Grafton and do like that northern section, go out to Baldpate in that area, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's another rainy weekend coming, unfortunately.
Hopefully not. Hopefully Saturday will be okay, but we'll see.
Okay.
It's time for Slasher's Notable Hike of the Week. If you want to be considered for the Hike of the Week, simply tag Slasher on your social media post.
But Stomp now is your favorite segment, Notable Hikes of the Week. You get to shout out all the hikers that tagged us on our Instagram.
That's right. So if you want to tag us on your adventure, do so. And we have a good handful here, not as long as some recent weeks, but let's get into it. So Rhonda's hiking again. Hiked the Moat Traverse. That's one of your favorite spots, so that she did the whole traverse. Speaking of the Moat Traverse, the other thing that I picked up on Nick News, which is this like North Conway news site, they were towing cars at Diana's Bath. So the tourists the Taurons were parking on West Side Road and they were getting their cars towed. So don't do that. What do you need? Do you need a National Forest pass for that, or is it?
There's a parking lot off of West Side Road, and you can park in there, and then there's no overflow. If you start parking on the side of the street, you're going to get towed, and it says no parking on both sides.
Got it.
The neighbors deal with enough headaches, and a lot of people like blocking their driveways, leaving dirty diapers all over the place, doing U-turns, just causing havoc. So it's the parking lot is the parking lot, and that's it. There's no on the road parking.
Got it. Okay. Alrighty, so we're moving on to Murph 45, hiked Lonesome Lake Trail. Very nice. Chris Wright and Tracy Morgan are in Morocco. They may be back by now, but they hiked up or climbed a 13,353-foot mountain called Jebel Magoon. I hope I say that correctly, but nice work, Chris and Tracy.
Those pictures were amazing.
Yeah, that's a whole other world out there. I was trying to think of some dumb Indiana Jones joke to post on their posts, like "Don't eat the dates," but I didn't.
Yeah. And Tracy gave me a shout out. She when I posted that I was at Hootie and the Blowfish, she was like, "I love them." So she's got good taste in music too. So thank you, Tracy.
So that's pretty awesome. Liz Fay is back again, and she's got a couple things going on here. So Deer Mountain Fire Tower Trail, which I'm not familiar with. Sounds pretty cool. And then Stub Hill in Pittsburgh, New Hampshire.
It's way up
Very
there.
nice. And then finally, Duchess 3663 hiked Mount Willard for 19 out of the 52 with a view list.
Let's dive into some White Mountains history, shall we?
All right, Stomp. So this is like a, we don't have like a, this is like the first time in a long time we don't have like a true segment or a guest or anything like that, but we've got to catch up on some stuff, and this will be a little bit of a shorter show, I think. But I did a little bit of research after the segment about the Trail Masters, so I was doing some additional digging around because I wanted to get more detail, and I found this website of a guy by the name of Alex McKenzie, who in his autobiography says he was born in 1940, so he's getting up to 84 years old. I may reach out to him to just see if that I can talk to him a little bit about this, but he put together a really cool website that has links to old Appalachia brochures that are written by Charles Blood and Paul Jenks. And I read about like 5 or 6 of these articles from Charles Blood and Paul Jenks. So they were like the original trail masters for the AMC. They were the ones that broke out the like the Webster Cliff trails and things like that. So I picked up a couple of cool stories here. So Charles Blood talks about the effort that it took to cut Webster Cliff Trail, and from Webster to Jackson and then Jackson to Mizpah. They talked about how first of all, they talked about how they found an ancient trail that helped guide them a little bit.
Like a herd path, or maybe
something like that, yeah. So they don't know, is it an animal herd path or is it something like that? So they were able to get a little bit of a read on either a herd path or an ancient path, and they were able to cut it. And then the funny thing is they named the trail the Cannibal Trail. So originally, before it was Webster Cliff, that section from Jackson over to Mizpah, they originally called that the Cannibal Trail. But the next year they renamed it officially Webster Cliff. And basically they cut it and they were like, okay, we've got the connection up to Mount Clinton, Mount Pierce now. And then they were like, plan B is going to be, we're going to go down to the cliffs and connect it over to Willard. So they did that one the next year, and he was talking about how like they really like had a hard time figuring out what direction to go, but once they sort of made it, they were starting to head downhill. They started like really picking up speed, and they busted through it. He also talked about how Paul Jenks basically set up the process and how they hired for the trail. So it wasn't just the 4 guys that we talked about last week. They had like a bigger crew over time, but by like 1923, they had tried out like some friends and they tried out some people they knew, and what they found was like there was only like 4 or 5 of them that really stuck with it. And then they started bringing in college kids. So these guys were like the big Paul Jenks and I think 1 or 2 of the other people, they were like librarians and teachers in school. So they worked from the beginning of June until September 1st when they had to go back to school. And then those 9 months when they were in school, all they would do was plan for what they were going to do for the 3 months that they had in the mountains.
Wow.
So what they started doing is they were like, we need people that are going to stick with us. So they would hire like 4 or 5 college kids, and they always wanted like freshmen. And essentially like they what they found was that they never asked people to come back. They would just have them do the work, and then they would observe them, and typically they'd realize, like, okay, there's a couple of them that would go home. And essentially what they did is they set up camp. A lot of their camps were in Livermore. So they would set up a camp, and they would be there for like 5 or 6 days. Originally, they got around on railroads, but like by the 1920s, they obtained like a Cadillac, and they would put like 5 or 6 of these guys from the trail crew in the Cadillac, and then they each had about 50 to 100 pounds worth of gear, and they would get around from basically like Waterville Valley up to Whitefield. Would be there, like where they would travel back and forth from. So they would be on the trail they only let them be out on the trail for like 5 or 6 days, because they found out that they basically discovered that like the college kids got a little antsy, so they needed like 1 or 2 days off. So they would give them Sundays off, bring them back up to Whitefield, a hot meal, shower, whatever, and then they would come back in. But what they found is that typically, like, they would never ask anybody back. They would just wait to see if the kids would like be like, oh, I want to come back next year. And they would typically keep like 1 or 2 kids out of the crew every year. And eventually by the mid-20s, they had like a core group of people that they could rely on. And then they could be more particular about the college kids that they brought in. But they basically said, like, we're only interested in college kids, because we tried to bring in, like, they tried to bring some local farmers' kids in and some other, but those ones were always worried about, like, okay, I got to go back to my parents' house, or I got to go back to, I want to know what my friends are up to. So they wanted like college kids that had no connections to the area.
Sure. Understandable.
Which was interesting. And then they also talked about the system. They figured out that like every 4 years they needed to do trail widening. So they would focus on the main trails, and then all the subsidiary trails or secondary trails, they put these like, remember in the library you would have like the Dewey Decimal System, and you would have the card system. That's how they manage the trails. Yeah. So they would have just a card, and they would mark when the last time they had cleaned that trail was, and then Paul Jenks would manage the card system from Flushing High School in New York.
That's really cool.
And then he would basically like come up with the plan on what trails they're going to clean out. So they had a list of trails where they would say like, okay, this is the trails we're going to build to connect the systems, and then the rest of the crew would be working on cleaning out the busy trails first, and then they would look to see what trails hadn't been cleaned out over the last 4 years and prioritize those.
Can you imagine?
What they found is that if you didn't touch a trail for 4 years, it would get grown in. So that was the limit.
Yeah, you know what they needed back then was a Kimball Rexford or something to take care of that.
Yeah, they needed like a database system or whatever. But they had cards.
Yeah.
They had flip cards.
There you go.
So here's the other thing is this guy, Paul Jenks, he also realized, like, apparently he was hiking like Airline or something, and he had to get down. So Paul Jenks was the guy that lived in Whitefield, and his house was kind of like the home base for these crews, but he had to rely on like a rail service in the like 1920s.
Yeah.
From White, and he almost like took a wrong turn, and he's like, we got to fix this. And he was the one that set about creating the trail signs. So he, over the years, created 5,000 trail signs within the White Mountains. So there was no trail signs before, so there was no nothing to guide him. So he was kind of like, okay, well, the Forest Service does have some signs, but those signs are all green, and they're more like artistic, and they're not necessarily like exposed to the weather like a trail sign would be above tree line or something like that. So he had to basically figure out like, okay, what kind of wood do I use? So he had to experiment with a bunch of wood, and he actually figured out that like softer pine wood was better because the paint would like absorb into the wood more efficiently.
Oh, so it wouldn't flake and whatever.
Exactly. So the softer wood was better because it would soak into the wood. And then he had to figure out like, okay, do I use black or green ink for the lettering, and then how does the lettering work? And essentially what he landed on was he would use this soft wood. He would use 4 coats of leaded white paint.
I was going to ask. It had to be lead
white
paint.
Yeah.
That's
leaded white paint. But the leaded white paint, what he found is that it was like too brittle.
Right.
So he had to basically, like, over time, they did like a mix. And what he was doing was he was taking all these plans back to Flushing High School in New York. And he would have the kids working on building this, painting and making the signs over the school season. And he'd bring the signs back up and put them in. And then what he also did was
don't chew the signs, kids.
And they created the, what are those called, where you like put something over a piece of wood and you spray paint it? The stencils. He created the stencils, and originally he created the stencils where all the letters were the same size. So if you had to build like a sign for Lakes of the Clouds hut, then you need like a 27-inch wood. And what he found was like all the signs were disparated sizes.
Right.
And eventually they figured out like, okay, we've got to adjust the stencil size because the signs that we're making are way bigger than we need them to be. So eventually they standardized them.
Yeah, it sounds like the lead was kicking in at that point.
Who knows? But what he found is like originally he had his own mix of white paint, but then eventually I think it was the DuPont Chemical Company put together a very similar formula. And he was like, all right, well, we can use this now. And then the other thing is they talked about like the signs would constantly get stolen.
Okay. Yeah, I can see
they
that.
had to figure out ways to like
nothing changes.
Make it so that the signs wouldn't get stolen, and they put nails in them like on the outside, and there was some weird stuff. So it's very fascinating. So I'll link all of these stories out. But they were very organized. That's the other thing is with the signs on the cards that he had for the trails, they had a number system where they would number the signs, and then they would number the card, and then they would put detailed descriptions on where the signs are, what direction they're facing, and then they had a date on when the signs were put in. So they would not only they had dates where they rotated the cleaning of the trails, but they had dates where they would rotate the changing of the signs up there too. And it was all done on this like file card system that Paul Jenks managed from Flushing, New York High School, and a bunch of his students were working on it.
That's really incredible.
Yeah, so that's how they managed it in the early days, and they had eventually, I think by like the 1930s, they had more of a standard like trail crew. There's another story that I found, and I'm going to do more digging into it before I share it, but in 1960, they had a trail crew, and they all quit, and they signed a letter of resignation. So something happened with the trail builders and the trail maintenance people, got no fight with the AMC, so I'm going to look into that later.
Oh, drama.
So
interesting.
But anyway, I thought that like this guy, Paul Jenks, and the guy, Charles Blood, absolutely amazing stories out of Appalachia from like the 1920s up to the 1940s. They basically wrote their stories down.
Right. I think I might submit a request to Biden to change that trail back to Cannibal Trail. I think that's really appropriate.
Oh, yeah. We used to call, like, we have this little, like, trail around our my father-in-law's place in Maine, and we would take the kids back there, and it's kind of dark and creepy, and we would be like, Cannibal Woods, it's Cannibal Woods, and the kids would be like, ah! So.
Oh, good stuff. Where are you finding all this
I'll link
stuff?
all this stuff.
Jeez.
Yeah, I'll link all this. It's like fascinating when you delve into this history. Like it's just so fascinating that the history that is out there.
Oh yeah, for sure.
All right, Stomp. Do you want to do the national stories? Because my voice is failing me a bit here.
Oh yeah, sure. Let's start with a hiker in Colorado.
Oh, but before we do that, let's do Fieldstone Kombucha.
Oh yeah, sure.
Kombucha.
Sounds good. So we have a sponsor, our last sponsor of the night, and that is Fieldstone Kombucha. Fieldstone Kombucha is New England's premier craft kombucha company. If you're in the heart of New England, you need to drink a New England-style kombucha, which is softer, less acidic, and truly enjoyable. Our kombucha is naturally effervescent and boasts full-bodied flavor. Fieldstone crafts the best seasonal flavors. When we tell you there are strawberries in our garden blush flavor, it's like biting into a sun-ripened strawberry. Woman-owned and operated, we brew in Rhode Island using locally sourced ingredients. Fieldstone Kombucha is the perfect replenishing drink after a day on the slopes or a trek in the woods. It's chock full of probiotics and healthy acids to keep you in top form. Find us at Sunflower Natural Foods in Laconia, Latas Cafe in Waterville Valley, the Concord Food Co-op, and Granite State Food Co-op in Concord, and more. Check out our website for the full list of New Hampshire and New England-wide locations and use the code SLASR on the website for 10% off an online order shipped straight to your door. That's fieldstonekombuchaco.com. And yes, so we have a couple national stories here. These are interesting. So we start off in Colorado at Mary's Glacier. So a hiker died apparently after falling an estimated 300 feet while he was hiking near this glacier in Clear Creek County. And they do show some pictures, and it almost looks like Tuckerman's, to be honest with you, in late winter, early spring. According to the rescue agency that responded, first responders began searching for a stranded or falling hiker near the lake after a call was received just before 2:30 p.m., and it's unconfirmed at this time, but it's likely that it was a bystander at the lake who called 911, where the hiker fell. So first responders joined with Alpine Rescue and discovered the hiker, and he was pronounced deceased at the scene. They had to use technical lowering devices to get below and down the snowy slope just for safety. There is an image that they refer to with an arrow where this person landed. The entire response lasted about 2 hours. It's unknown on the day of the fall whether the hiker was a Colorado resident or not, but there you go. Another huge slip and fall, which is terrible.
Yeah, a lot of snow up there.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, is the snow arch or the snow bridge in Tux gone at this point?
I don't know. It's a good question. The snow was holding on pretty well on Memorial Day, but I have to imagine it's got to be gone by now. But I won't be getting up there anytime soon to check it out. I'm not dealing with that crowd, but we'll see. I'll see if I can find some pictures.
All right. Sounds good. Hopefully nobody will be under it like previous years. So now we go to San Bernardino National Forest. Hikers injured in the forest requiring rescue. So 2 hikers were injured while trekking in the San Bernardino National Forest, requiring Riverside County firefighters and U.S. Forest Service rangers to stage an operation. Hikers Down call was received at 12:15 p.m. And let's see, this is near the Thomas Mountain Campground, roughly a mile west of Highway 74, blah, blah, blah. Agency said that multiple engine crews along with U.S. Forest Service personnel went to search for the hikers, and they were located within a couple hundred yards of each other. Officials said one victim suffered a head injury that caused temporary loss of consciousness, while the other had unspecified minor injuries. They don't really go into details about what happened here, but maybe there was a slip and fall. It happens. I mean, even right here up on Falling Waters, plenty of times people get injuries to their spine, their neck, their head. They had to, they had to call a helicopter crew. So at about 12:40, a sheriff's helicopter crew was preparing to perform a hoist rescue and transport the man with the head injury out. They arrived at 1 p.m. Where a Mercy Air ambulance took care of them. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The last line here is that there's no immediate word on how they were injured.
Well, okay.
Yeah, who knows?
Well, I pulled one additional story out of San Diego that actually Al had sent this over to me. Deem Lee Wynn, a 50-year-old woman, was hiking the Nighthawk Trail on Black Mountain, which is in the San Diego area. She was hiking with a group of 100 hikers participating in a 5K fundraiser for the Build a School Foundation.
Interesting.
The group stopped halfway up around 8 a.m., and then Wynn had decided that she was going to go ahead and finish the trail alone. And by 9:30, she contacted her group, telling them that she had reached the end of the trail. By 10:08, Wynn had contacted her sister to say that she was tired and needed water. And then there had been no contact with her after that. Originally, she was considered missing and at risk because of the hot weather, just because it was the first heat wave of the summer in San Diego. Later reports indicated that San Diego police had found a body that matches the description, and that she had died. So that's kind of a wild story. But again, stay together. Stay together. Don't go off on your own.
Wow, yeah, 100 people too, and they lost her. That's amazing.
Yeah, she just went on her own. They were kind of like, look, we're not, she wanted to turn a 5K into a 10K, and then the weather conditions were not great. So
yeah, really hot.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right. So Stomp, just moving to the local area. We've got 3 situations here. So this is on Saturday around 10:45. There was an injured trail runner on the Wild River. This is the Wild River, not the Dry River. So I apologize. I thought it was a dry river. So 28-year-old from North Conway, New Hampshire. So I've seen this name before. I think that this person is a pretty prolific trail runner. Definitely knows what they're doing. This is like a shit happens type of situation, but the runner sustained a leg injury and wasn't sure if she could make it out without assistance. GPS coordinates placed her, for 5 miles from the Wild River campground. So she's way in there.
Oh yeah.
So our conservation officers responded to Wild River Road, where due to severe washouts of the road, they used ATVs to get around the washouts and access Wild River. Yeah, I think Wild River Campground shut down, I believe. So the call came in at 10:45. She was able to make it to the campground where she met the conservation officers around 2:30. So she gutted it out for like 3-4 hours making it back there.
Right.
And then she was able to hop in the ATV and given a ride back to her vehicle in Jackson, where she began her hike. So experienced trail runner and hiker. She was well prepared, and she clearly made some miles while she was injured.
That's great.
Good for her. And hopefully she's healing up and she'll be out there ripping trails soon enough.
Yeah, it's always impressive when people actually try to self-rescue.
Yeah,
happens a lot.
I always say, Stomp, I said, I got 2 options. I'm either going to crawl out or I'm going to have to call Stomp, but I'm not calling for rescue.
I know, no kidding. A lot of times people just realize how much work it's going to be to actually get out. It's going to take me 24 hours to get back to the trailhead. I have to call for help.
And listeners, I joke, I would definitely call if I needed help. And if I was with someone, I would call. So, all right, this next one is an old favorite, Old Bridle. Fair amount of activity always on Falling Waters and Old Bridle. So this was on Tuesday, June 25th. So this is just yesterday.
Yep.
Conservation officers from Fish and Game were notified of a 44-year-old female had fallen and suffered a lower leg injury and could no longer continue without assistance. Rescuers reached the hiker around 9:30. So this came in at 7:20 p.m.
Yep.
And then rescuers reached the hiker at 9:30. She was about 2 miles from the trailhead. She's from St. Louis, Missouri. And due to the nature of the injuries, they put the hiker in a rescue litter, and carryout commenced at 9:50 p.m. And the rescue party was able to safely navigate the 2 miles to the trailhead and arrived just before midnight. And then the hiker was taken by family members to a regional hospital to evaluate her injuries. They had been hiking Falling Waters Bridle Path Loop with family and were coming down when she slipped on wet rocks, causing the lower leg injury. The family was pretty well prepared, and Good Samaritan hikers escorted the family to the trailhead while the rescue took place. So plenty of help out there.
Yeah, so looking at the map, that is well above the hairpin. That's definitely up into the ledges. So, I mean,
Yep.
Oh yeah, it's up there for sure. So it's been so
it
wet.
sounds like she's probably around, like, there's sort of those switchbacks on Old Bridle before you get to the Agony, so she's probably like down one of those sections.
Yeah. Interesting.
So, speaking of that area, I'll put this in the show notes and I'll post some stuff on our social media, but there was a call for trail work volunteers to help out with some of the work that's going on with, I think, Falling Waters, Old Bridle, Franconia. There's like a federal program of trail builders, and they have like professional builders that know what they're doing, and then they just need volunteers to help out, and I think that they've got like dates scheduled over the course of the next like month or two. So I'll put the details in the show notes if you're interested and you want to give a hand and you want to try your hand at like trail maintenance or trail building. Then you could volunteer here. It sounds like a good opportunity.
Absolutely.
And then last but not least, we've got a hiker that is assisted off of Mount Monadnock. So this was yesterday as well, just before 8:30. Fish and Game was contacted by local fire department that a hiker had been injured, suffered a lower leg injury on the White Cross Trail. The hiker was from Harriman, New York, and indicated she couldn't continue. So the park staff responded to White Cross and was able to splint the injury a little less than a mile from the headquarters, and then the hiker was able to walk out under her own power between a quarter and a half a mile. So the remaining half mile, I guess they carried her out. So good for her for making it that far, and good for the rescue team for getting her out. So she made it to the trailhead by 2:30. So 8:30 call in the morning, and then she was out by 2:30.
I'm trying to recall. So White Cross is fairly steep.
Yeah, White Cross is like, I can't remember White Cross, White Dot, but essentially those two trails are the main trails that come out of the Monadnock Park
Ranger.
Like the ranger station area. And one of them has like this sort of chimney part that's pretty steep coming down, but it's a lot of open ledges, and people that aren't used to it, like I could easily see them slipping and falling in wet conditions, right? Because it is pretty steep. So, and people don't know, like if you haven't done it a lot, you don't realize, like, I see a lot of people just will go right out on the ledges instead of like, there's like a crag that you can go down, and you want to step inside that crag to give your foot like a little purchase to hold on to, or you want to go, maybe you go backwards if you're not comfortable. But a lot of people just are unsure, and they're not used to walking on that terrain, so they don't know what to do, and they slip and fall, and you got an injury.
There you go. Busy spot.
All right.
Well,
it's not the same as walking on flat ground, Stomp.
That's true. So,
but we made it. We got a little 1 week break here. Hopefully, we'll have new patches by the time we get back.
That's right. We have a couple guests lined up for the return journey, and
we got Rhonda. Our friend Rhonda is going to be in, I think, in a week or two.
Yep. Episode 159. So happy 4th of July. Be safe out there, everybody, and we will see you soon.
Yeah, 2 weeks. See ya.
See ya.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to learn more about the topics covered in today's show, please check out the show notes and safety information at SLASRPodcast.com. That's SLASRPodcast.com. You can also follow the show on Facebook and Instagram. We hope you'll join us next week for another great show. Until then, on behalf of Mike and Stomp, get out there and crush some mega peaks.
Now covered in scratches, blisters, and bug bites, Chris Staff wanted to complete his most challenging day hike ever.
Fish and Game officers say the hiker from Florida activated an emergency beacon yesterday morning. He was hiking along the Appalachian Trail when the weather started to get worse. Officials say the snow was piled up to 3 feet in some spots, and there was a wind chill of -1 degree.
And there's 3 words to describe this race. Do we all know what they are? Only one hell!
Here's Lieutenant James Nealon, New Hampshire Fish and Game. Lieutenant, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
What are some of the
the most common mistakes you see people make when they're heading out on the trails to hike here in New Hampshire?
It seems to me the most common is being unprepared, and I think if they just simply visited hikesafe.com and got a list of the 10 essential items and had those in their packs, they probably would have no need to ever call us at all.